Welcome everybody to this slot or this resource session. So we're going to be talking about a resource or resources around the topic of aligning language education to the CEFR, and the resource is a handbook and a range of other documents that you can use with a handbook. So yesterday we had a panel on 25 years of the CEFR. And it turns out that it's much longer than 25 years, but 2001 was the blue book and the red book, and then we've had many language translations. But within 5 years, it was quite clear that there had been a massive impact, and the first impact noted was on assessment and on people claiming that their materials, whether it was their exams or their course books, were pitched at a level in the framework. So this course book is B1, or my exam is a B1. What's yours? Mine's a B1 too. How do I know your B1 is the same as my B1? So these questions emerged very, very quickly, and the first manual that was developed was to address the sort of testing issues around standard setting and alignment of exams to the framework. And there were a number of other tools on how you make a valid argument about the level of your test. But it was quite clear, though, that if you were doing it for exams, you needed to think beyond just the exam. Because what about that book? Or what about the policy that the policymaker is introducing, which says all 16-year-olds will be at B1 in English and A2 in French and so forth. So how do you then make sure that the book with the materials based on the curriculum for that policy is aligned to the exam? The problem is that typically different actors in the system are working on those different aspects of the educational ecosystem or ecology. So this has been a challenge now for the last 20 years. And a few years ago, after the companion volume came out, a group of people who we'll hear about, because we're on this stage to some extent, got together and had a meeting to discuss this issue. It was just about 6 weeks before COVID, and so that wasn't helpful. But the resources which we've been produced have been the result of an ongoing conversation between a number of associations, including ALTE, but also EALTA, UKALTA, and the British Council. And that this handbook we're talking about is the outcome of that work. So, Graham, do you want to wave it?
I have the German version.
So one of the issues is that we obviously produced it in English, but we've been working on how we can have it in other languages, and that's the German one. We also have a Spanish one, and others, as Graham will tell you, are being produced in other languages. So yes, it's on the screen, I can see. So that's my introduction. Did I miss anything, Barry?
No idea.
I know you weren't listening, but okay. Are you next?
No, I've been on for a while, yeah. Was that the introduction?
Yes.
Well, I'm supposed to only talk for about 4 minutes.
Can you use the clicker to go through?
Oh, okay,
The
yeah.
big wee button.
Yeah, I pressed it like as usual, it doesn't work.
No, it worked.
That's why it still matters. Sorry, I should have shown you that, all right?
As you can see, we're a well-oiled machine up here.
So-
Total control of it.
So one of the issues that we've been addressing is what do we mean by alignment, and where are arguments about alignment going wrong in the past? How can we work on that? That's what I was going to say, right? I think I've said it.
Yeah.
So how, next one is how the handbook, which we produced, supports alignment.
Right. Well, the handbook that we produced, the handbook we produced came out when? 22? And it was designed to help people to understand in a fairly broad way, without going into the absolute details of how you might go about aligning an assessment, primarily because being testing people, to the CEFR. After the CV came out, we thought, well, we really do need to listen. And Brian North was somebody who complained quite a lot, quite regularly, about the fact that CFR had been taken over by language testers. And in many ways he was right, but I don't see why he complained about it, to be honest, because language testers really pushed the use of the CFR so that we could compare tests. So if we look at a test that Nick is responsible for, say, in Cambridge, and a test that I designed, APTIST, in the British Council, if you look at a B2 in that, they're completely different, because the underlying construct that we're trying to assess is different. One is a more academic language, one is a more everyday language. So they're going to be different. So your B2s can be different. But more and more in recent years, we've been looking at bringing teaching, learning and assessment together, and not treating assessment as something that's out there, like a pariah, which it always has been, really, in the past. So when we created the supplement over the last year and a half, we were more interested now in thinking about, well, how would you do this? How relevant is this alignment process? How relevant are all these different steps to the different elements of the learning system? So the teaching, learning and assessment of it. So when we talk about alignment, we're not just talking about alignment of assessment. We're talking about alignment. Excuse me. I was hoping I would cough. We're talking about alignment of everything. Now, what am I supposed to say next? We've heard over the last couple of days, people are beginning happily now to talk about context and the importance of context and context of use. I've been talking about it for literally 10 years. I think I wrote about it first 10 years ago. That without context, you don't have anything. And so when we're looking at these things, you know, when we talk about the different tests, for example, we're talking about two different contexts of assessment. So your tests, a B2 test doesn't have to look like it. My B2 does not have to look like yours. But we still need evidence to show that it is relevant, that to make that comparison, level-wise comparison, not content-wise comparison. So it is tricky, and there's a lot of work involved in doing it, and all elements are the same. We go through the same stages, and in the supplement, one of the things we've tried to do is to create graphics to show how you go through that process, but also graphics to help you to understand the importance of different elements of the process to assessment that change if you're looking at a textbook. They might change again when you look at a curriculum. You still go through the same stages, but the content of the stages may vary a little bit, and the relevance will vary a lot. So, for example, in assessment, we're very keen on cut scores and understanding exactly where B1 ends and B2 starts. Well, in the materials, you may not really need that level of accuracy. So the measurement side, the measurement model that underpins your test is very relevant. So the measurement bit of alignment is very important for assessment, not so important for materials. It's still there, but it's not so important. What am I saying next?
Evidence and or transparency.
Yeah, it's all evidence. The one thing that we're talking about here is you could put the evidence and the transparency together. Is essentially we do an alignment project. We document that project. We then can demonstrate to anybody else who wants to ask what we did, how we did it, and what the outcomes were. So it's transparent, it's open. Before I finish, I will say, if I go to a website and I see somebody claiming that their test is A1 or A2 or B3, I ignore it until I see the proof. So I'm a doubter. So for me, if you can't demonstrate clearly how you did something, how you make a claim, you don't have a claim. I just ignore it. And I'll pass on.
Could I just say, though, for testers, this is a normal way of working, right? We build a validity argument. You have to claim something. This is a B1 test, assessing these skills. And this is the reason with the evidence of why it works. You can challenge it if you don't believe it, but the tester has to be able to defend that position. This is not familiar to people who work in other elements of the ecosystem around curriculum and materials, for example. And policymakers are often obtuse to the meaning of these things, although they quite like the idea of the levels.
Okay, no worries. Hopefully you can hear me. I'll lean over to my left slightly to make that work. Great. So thanks both. Yeah, I'm Nathaniel Owen, so you may not know me, but I've been asked to speak on this topic a little bit because I was, I suppose, one of the first people to actually use the handbook for a CFR alignment project. It came out just at the exact moment, exactly, that at Oxford University Press, we were looking to do an alignment project, aligning a test to the Common European Framework, and the handbook came out exactly at the moment that we were about to start the project. So I thought, great, this is a brand new resource. So it was really nice to be able to put this handbook into use and then have an opportunity to provide a little bit of feedback to the people who actually produced it. So as Nick mentioned, there is already a manual for aligning tests to the CFR, as well as other curricula, content, materials, published in 2009. And you may therefore be familiar with the kind of classic, in inverted commas, stages of CFR alignment. So familiarization, specification, standardization, standard setting, and then sometimes a fifth stage called validation. These steps and the content of the manual can sometimes be quite dense, potentially quite intimidating if you've never been involved in CFR alignment before. So the handbook really tries not to replace the manual, but I think actually works very well alongside it. They're actually quite well cross-referenced against each other. The handbook is more accessible, I think shorter and punchier, and tries to demystify these alignment stages. So instead of using that kind of terminology that I've just outlined, it does talk a little bit more about clarifying purposes and constructs and reviewing systems and documents and how to gather and evaluate evidence and to document your decisions. So a little bit more everyday language, just to make it a bit user-friendly, I think. It also, I really think, emphasizes in a way that perhaps the manual doesn't, the contingency of these kind of categories as well. So you won't necessarily do them in the kind of classic order of familiarization first, specification second. From my own experience, for example, we actually did the specification first, and then familiarization was reserved for people who weren't actually involved in the development of the test. And then the standard setting and validation we considered to be one stage, for example. So really just to clarify what Barry said a bit and speak a little bit more about that. It really is not just about doing one specific project and then finishing, and then only having individual pieces of evidence. It is about triangulating multiple pieces of evidence from the conception of whatever it is you're aligning to the CFR through to whatever it is you subsequently present to your stakeholders, your teachers, your learners. Invariably, this data will always be qualitative and quantitative in nature. So everything is kind of a mixed method study these days in language testing. And then it will always involve some form of expert judgment, which will be informed by the available evidence. And then probably based on the conversation that we had last night, really, I mean, validation is kind of everything, really. Everything that we do speaks to validity. So aligning to the CFR is validity, and everything that we do that we collect around tests or curricula or learning materials and anything that we put out there speaks to the credibility of whatever it is that we're trying to use. And CFR alignment is also ongoing. So although we do talk about CFR alignment projects, and we do have sort of beginning and ending of these projects, they don't necessarily just exist in a vacuum. And then so we've done our CFR alignment. We can package our CFR bands on our products and then say that's the end of that. We will always be constantly evaluating, even if it's only in our minds, has anything drifted? Has anything changed? If we tweak the curricula, if we introduce slightly new materials here and there, have we altered our CFR alignment in some way? So there will always be a need for us to sort of rethink and reconceptualize any alignment project. So that's sort of a little bit about the handbook and why it exists, really. And then both Nick and Barry have mentioned the supplement, which seems a bit odd because we produced this resource, this handbook, in 2022. So why would suddenly a supplement be needed only a few years later? Well, as you probably saw from the beginning, from the image, the handbook was published in 2022. And as I'm sure you all know from this morning's excellent keynotes, what else happens in 2022? You know, the AI elephant marched into the room and sort of upset everything in its wake a little bit. So we had to start thinking, okay, well, are people using AI for CFR alignment in any way? Not only AI, I mean, that was a kind of huge impetus, but there are also others as well. So renewed focus on plurilingualism and ethics and social justice that perhaps we didn't feel that the handbook had necessarily dealt with as fully as perhaps could have done. So there was definitely a need for clarifying some of these issues in relation to what was already in the handbook. So the supplement does not replace the handbook. It does exist alongside it. So you will be able to download both, and you should probably try and read both alongside each other. I would also say that when the handbook was produced in 2022, there were a lot of people who used it fairly quickly and then subsequently provided a lot of very meaningful feedback very quickly. And that feedback has also found its way into that supplement as well. I also want to emphasize that the newest volume of the CFR Journal, which I think you will find references to the handbook in many of the articles in this new volume. So this is fairly hot off the press. I think the CFR Journal Volume 8 was published really only in March. So do have a look at that as well for some very, very up-to-date examples of CFR alignments and how they've been done. And some of those use AI, and some of them conduct their alignments in an online environment rather than kind of face-to-face panels. So there was very much a need to think about how to use or how to conduct alignment projects virtually, not just face-to-face. And so that's what the supplement really does. It does expand guidance on the areas I've just spoken about. It does provide, as Barry said, these really, really nice conceptual diagrams for planning and communication and dissemination. And it does provide a lot more guidance on clarifying core terminology around curriculum, learning, delivery, and assessment. And I think at this point, I'm happy to hand over to Graham. Yeah.
Perfect, with 5 minutes to go. Excellent. So we as language assessment providers need to be using the handbook if we want to give that validity evidence that our tests align to the CFR, or indeed if other learning materials align to the CFR. Obviously, it was important to see our institutions actually using the handbook, and we were very pleased that they do. And we had a conference in Barcelona in October 2024 when a number of people got together and showed that they were using the handbook and how they were using the handbook to align their material, if it were tests or if it were other learning materials, to the CFR. And obviously, assessment and certification bodies like us use it, but then we also saw in different contexts how the handbook was being used, and now hopefully also how the supplement will be used alongside it. And Nate's already mentioned the CFR Journal, which gives other case studies about how the handbook is being used in CFR alignment, again, in assessment, but also in curricula and other areas too. Yes, the original document was written in English, but we're very, very keen to have it translated into other languages. And with that, translation doesn't just come the translation of the words of the text, but also putting it into the context. If you deal with tests in other languages, you've probably been perhaps even frustrated by English translations, and then how do you use those terms in your own language? What's mediation in your language? And I'm sure you've had to think of these issues. So these are certain issues that our translators have had to deal with. So we pointed out the German version of the handbook, which is available online and also from the Goethe desk over there. You can get it in paper copy. We also have it in Spanish, and there are further translations underway, Turkish and Ukrainian. And if you're interested in translating the handbook and the supplement as well, then come and speak to me. So ALTE is the one of these 4 organizations that is coordinating the translation. We have that responsibility because of our multilingual nature. So just to conclude, as we said, CEFR alignment is dynamic. It depends on the context, and therefore the handbook and the supplement reflects that, looks into how you put that into practice in your context. And we, as ALTE members, have that responsibility to use the handbook, if you're aligning to the CEFR, and then to feed back on it. Tell us, how have you used it? Has it worked? What has worked? What maybe hasn't worked? In what way did you have to adapt what's said in the handbook to your specific context? So please let us know. The original old guard of the handbook is Nick and Barry, Linda Taylor, Neas Figueras, and David Little. Have I missed anybody? No. And they have sort of passed the baton to the more youthful, maybe, Nate, myself, Carolyn Westbrook, and Armin, I've forgotten his surname temporarily. Yeah, thanks. We got the slide in a minute. So please give us your feedback. There you can see the translations in German and in Spanish. And the handbook and the supplement are available on all the websites, but obviously I'm going to promote the ALTE website. Other websites are available, British Council, UKALTA, EALTA, but the ALTE website has the handbook and the supplement. It's on our materials, our resources page, so please freely download it from there. And as we said, we want feedback. It's a living document, so send your suggestions to us or Armin, who is collating those suggestions as well. So, a great thank you from us, the new handbook steering group. Obviously, Nick and Barry are very much staying involved, but us 5 have sort of taken on the mantle now. There we go. Do you 3 want to say anything else as we finish?
This is our last hurrah, by the way. From now on, when you hear anything about the handbook, us old buggers won't be around anymore. It'll be these guys. So this is it. This is the end of the road.
So bye.
You're not dead quite yet. Although by the coughing from both of you, I slightly worry about that.
There are some other references, I think.
Yes, sorry, yeah. Here are the other references for you to go to. If you have any questions, we might even have 1 minute for a question. No, we don't have any time for questions, but obviously come and talk to us in the break and use it and tell us how you use it. Thanks so much for listening.